He's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief.
And he's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with 28 years of experience. Together, Henry and I are the Brief Brothers. We love talking about advertising, creative briefs, and briefing. Henry, we're back. This episode we're recording today will be our first for the 2024. So it makes sense for us to kind of look back over this last year and kind of do a recap, talk about our favorite episodes, some of the things we've noticed. Because the thing I want to actually start off with is the fact that you and I have been doing this now. We've wrapped up our 3rd year together as the Brief Brothers. We deserve to, pat ourselves on the back.
And you haven't killed me yet.
And we're still talking to each other. Yeah, it's amazing. When we started out, and we talked about this before, we look back on our first episode and we're kind of laughing at ourselves because we talked like this because we were a little nervous and didn't know what we were doing, and how we've gotten so much more relaxed. What are some of the things that you can look back on in 2023 that stand out for you? I've got a few from my list. What stands out for you?
One of them is I think we started looking at some actual briefs and dissecting them. I think in the past we were, as a substitute for that, we were kind of doing the reverse engineering exercise where we'd look at an ad. So I think one of the themes for our podcast, and it's natural for any podcast, is evolution. Like, we've figured out what works and what doesn't work. And I think that when we can get our hands on a brief, it really works to talk about it and dissect it. I think that adds value to any listeners out there who are looking to improve their creative brief writing skills, to see other people's briefs, because as you've talked about a lot, that's usually not something you get to do. And I know you made a big announcement earlier this year about the Creative Brief Archive. So maybe you want to talk about that a little bit, because that was a highlight, obviously. And it's still nascent. It's still something that's very much in its, incubator stage. But the idea is that people will continue to send us briefs. Please send Howard your briefs so that he can post them on his Creative Brief Archive website.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm really proud of the archive, and I think it indicates an interest in the fundamentals. So I think the first thing on my list was the fact that we've done this for 3 years, and the second thing on my list was, as you pointed out, and as the archive reflects, there's, I think, increased chatter, at least on LinkedIn, where I spend most of my time, among those who I follow and who follow us, or you and me, are having conversations about it. And one was our guest, Biba Madison, has her own version of my archive. She calls it her Creative Brief Bank, and she has some of the briefs that I've got. So between the two of us, we are building a resource that I think is valuable, because you and I can talk about how to write a brief until we're blue in the face, but unless you actually see a brief, especially a good brief, and we talk about how it comes together, you're not going to learn how to do this. You have to demonstrate and show. You can't teach by telling. And so that's one of the most fundamental things. Even a flawed brief. We looked at, what was it, the brief for Tango Soda not that long ago, which is a brief I used in my first book, the first edition of my book, as I think a good brief. And now I look back on it and say, well, there's still good aspects to it, but it could be better. And here's what I would do with the brief instead. So yeah, I think that's an excellent a point of, we had a chance to really dissect some briefs and understand what made them good. Another thing that I would add to my list was that we started talking to students this year. We invited recent graduates of some of the top advertising schools. One was the School of Communication Arts in London with our friend Mark Lewis, and the other was from our friend Mark Jensen at the Hubbard School of Mass Communications and Journalism at the University of Minnesota. And we talked to some of his most recent graduates. I think that's a fun feature to hear what, how young folks are adjusting to the world of with a career. I think that's a
Uh,
fascinating
A-
aspect.
Absolutely, and I think it serves as inspiration for those who might be thinking of a strategy career, particularly if they're maybe in the account service part of agencies and they're looking at our videos because they have to write, they're being pressed into service to write briefs. I think talking to young strategists and young brief writers is a definitely a worthy exercise. Plus, it makes me feel old. And who doesn't like that?
Well, if you recall the conversation we had with one of my favorite guests, Sarah Walker Hall, I love to refer to her because she wrote the brief for the Kiwi shoe polish, a brief I absolutely love and adore, and have known about for so many years, but didn't know who the author was. She started her career, as I recall, in brand management before she leapt into strategy. So, and then even that young student, Tyrese Leverty, I think he also eased his way into strategy. He didn't start out thinking that strategy was going to be his first choice. So it's interesting to hear some of our guests talk about how they've evolved into their careers. And even you didn't start off your career in strategy. You worked your way
No,
into it. You
yeah.
kind of sidled your way up to it.
Jack of all trades in the agency until I landed in what was then called account planning and now it's called strategy.
Well, I mean, I was a media relations guy for a couple of years
I
before
think you told me like the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Yeah, my first
I
job out of
actually
college.
I actually saw a bumper sticker the other day for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. I don't know if they have a new incarnation or not, but the bumper sticker didn't look that old.
They might. I do recall George Steinbrenner, who is he the late George Steinbrenner? I think at
Yes,
this point,
he passed. Yeah.
the former owner or the one-time owner of the New York Yankees did say back in the day, this is now in the 70s and 80s, when the Tampa Bay Rowdies were in existence, they said that the Tampa Bay Rowdies was the best marketed sports franchise in all of sports.
Wow.
So high praise from a man hard to please. One thing that has not changed, I think you and I could remark on that we've witnessed in 2023 is the degree of poor quality briefs that come from our marketing friends on the client
Yes.
side.
Despite and I agree with you. Despite I think there's more interest in the subject than ever before, and who would have thought we
Yes.
would have 3 years worth of a podcast? And the interactions you get on LinkedIn and stuff about briefs. In my professional career, I'm still seeing a lot of crummy briefs coming from clients. Just had one the other day, and I was laughing because I felt if I could only share this, it would be hilarious, but I will not share it. But it was just, it was everything you wouldn't want in a brief 6 pages full of jargon that, you know, uh, us as a new agency for this client would have been, we don't, I don't have a problem getting on the phone and saying, tell me what's this acronym mean? What's that mean? But I shouldn't have to. Like they should kind
Right.
of explain what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I think this is the reason why, at least for the time being, I'm going to continue having employment and you're going to continue being able to do your workshops is because um, this is an overlooked but important area.
I think in defense of our marketing friends, there is a growing recognition that this is a need that needs to be filled. And that's what I get to do. And when I'm out there either doing it virtually or in person or on site with these marketers, they're eager to know what can I do to help my creative partners. There's a greater recognition that this document is not for them, it's for the creative partners. So when they see what you and I know is a good brief, and they start to examine it, there's a light bulb moment where they say, oh, okay, I see this. They don't need to know that. They need
Yeah.
to know this.
Yeah. I mean, it boils down to as simple as you got to step out of your shoes and put yourself in the shoes of a creative person who doesn't live and breathe your thing every day, and who has to put words on a page or create images, or and don't give them a bunch of stuff they don't need, and make sure you give them the stuff they do need. And when you put a light on it, like in a workshop, and you say, does the creative really need to know this? What your business goal, KPI is? Um, no, because it's not going to change the copy. So when you put a bright light on it, I think they have kind of a, oh yeah, like, if they're honest with themselves.
Right, right. Anything else that you can think of that really stood out to you? Get favorite guests from 2023. We had some good guests, didn't we?
I really liked the episodes that you did with Ernie Schenk. I wasn't there. Um,
That's
we had
right.
a pinch hitter in Mark Jensen,
Mark Jensen, yep. He
and
did the Joan Rivers thing to My Bad Johnny Carson.
but of course, I have to edit these episodes, so I got to watch the whole thing, and I really enjoyed that one. Uh, you had mentioned Sarah Walker Hall. I think that was great. I think her brilliance really just comes through. Such a smart woman. And we had a nice conversation with Bob Harrison, who's a creative director at an agency called Lucky and Company. Um, all of those and more. Just another great year of guests, and I think we've got a couple of good ones lined up for 2024. So
Yes. Yes, we do. Let's, put the word out, Tom Fishburne, I hope you're listening because we want you. That's maybe more hopeful, but we're going to try to get him.
I'm
Yeah,
working I'm working on a big one that if we get, it'll be really good.
yeah, I wish I could say that I'm working on Sir John Haggerty, but I'm just working on that. I'm not sure. I'm working on that. But the other thing I'm looking forward to is more conversations with recent graduates of both the London school that we've worked with and the Minnesota school to hear what the next generation of strategists and creatives are going to be doing. That's going to be, I think, fascinating. And we talked about Chat GPT in just the last couple of episodes.
Yep, that's another big, thing that's current, and we're on top of it. The Brief Brothers are on top of it.
We are absolutely on top of that. Yeah. So, what about 2024? What do you think? I don't want to force us to make any predictions, but what are you looking forward to in 2024?
Well, always the Super Bowl. So that'll maybe we'll get a couple of things that we'll say, what were they thinking, or we can
Usually, what are they thinking? The
yeah,
creative has not been all that stellar in the last couple
yeah.
of Super
We could
Bowls.
do not necessarily a big creative review episode, but we could definitely talk about what we saw during the Super Bowl. As I mentioned, have a marketer who's agreed to come on, but haven't nailed him down yet on when he's going to come on. I think that'll be a name that people they'll want to see him talk about his ideas about marketing and strategy and briefing. And continuing, as part of the podcast is being organic and reacting to what we see out there. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to doing more reviews of actual creative briefs, the ones that we have already in the archive and the ones that are going to start showing up. So I'm looking forward to a great 2024, and we had a great 2023, Henry. So good stuff, Henry.
good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
And he's Howard Ibach, and together we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time, bye
Bye
bye.
bye.